Module 2. The Customer Service Standard Requirement. The customer service standard requires organizations and businesses to provide accessible customer service to people with disabilities. Meeting the following requirements prepares your organization to provide accessible customer service to people with all types of disabilities. The customer service standards are as follows. 1. Create accessible customer service policies. You must put policies in writing and provide them on request. 2. Consider a person's disability when communicating with them. 3. Allow people to use assistive devices when accessing your services. 4. Inform the public when accessibility facilities or services are temporarily unavailable, for example, an accessible washroom or elevator. The notice must include the reason for the disruption, how long it will last, and any alternatives, if available. 5. Allow service animals. In situations where the animal is prohibited by another law, you must provide another way for the person to access your services. 6. Welcome support persons. And lastly, invite customers to provide feedback. This includes setting up a process for receiving and responding to feedback about the way your organization provides customer service to people with disabilities, including what action will be taken if a complaint is received. Make sure information about your feedback process available to the public and ensure your feedback process is accessible. Additionally, under the customer service standard, there are documentation requirements that must be followed. Organizations must put their accessible customer service policies in writing. Let customers know these policy documents, or document, are available on request, for example, posting a notice in a high-traffic area or website. Provide the documents in an accessible format or with communication supports, if requested, and in a timely manner and at no additional cost than what you would normally charge. Keep a record of the accessible customer service training provided, including a summary of the content, when it's to be provided, the number of people trained, and the dates. Now, let's discuss how to serve people with disabilities. Accessible customer service is about not making assumptions about what a person can or cannot do because of their disability. Inclusion, making everyone feel welcome and included. Understanding that people with disabilities may have different needs. Showing sensitivity and respect, such as using appropriate language and terminology. So, what is appropriate language and terminology? 1. Use the term disability, not handicapped. 2. Remember to put people first. Say person with a disability rather than disabled person. 3. Reference specific disabilities when appropriate, such as a person with a developmental disability. And lastly, avoid sympathetic phrases such as victim of, suffers with, confined to a wheelchair, physically challenged, or stricken with a particular illness or disability. First, let's explore how to serve people with physical or mobility disabilities. It's important to note that not everyone with a physical or mobility disability uses a wheelchair. For example, someone with arthritis may use a cane or walker, while someone with a heart or lung condition may not use a mobility device at all but may have difficulty walking longer distances. When serving people with physical or mobility disabilities, the following service tips are recommended. 1. If you need to have a lengthy conversation with someone who uses a wheelchair or scooter, consider sitting so you can make eye contact at the same level. 2. If it applies, inform your customer of the accessible features in the immediate area, such as automatic doors, accessible washrooms, elevators, or ramps. 3. If the service counter is too high for a person using a wheelchair to see over, step around it to provide service. Next, let's learn how to serve people with vision loss. People with vision loss may use a guide dog, a white cane, or a support person such as a sighted guide, while others may not. Don't assume the person can't see. Not everyone with vision loss is totally blind. Many have some vision. The following service tips are recommended. 1. Identify yourself when you approach and speak directly to your customer. 2. Ask if they would like printed information read out loud to them. 3. Offer your elbow to guide them if needed. Lead, don't pull. 4. Don't leave them in the middle of a room. Let them know when you are leaving. 5. Be precise and descriptive when offering directions. And lastly, identify landmarks and details to orient them to their surroundings. Serving people with hearing loss. People who have hearing loss may identify in different ways. They may be deaf, oral deaf, deafened, or hard of hearing. These terms are used to describe different levels of hearing or the way a person's hearing was diminished or lost. People with hearing loss might use a hearing aid, an amplification device, hearing ear dog, communicate through sign language, by lip reading, or using a pen and paper. The following service tips are recommended. 1. Face the customer when talking and make sure that you are in a well-lit area. 2. As needed, attract the person's attention before speaking. Try a gentle touch on the shoulder or wave of your hand. 3. Maintain eye contact. Use body language, gestures, and facial expression to help you communicate. 4. If the person uses a hearing aid, reduce background noise or move to a quieter area. 5. Don't assume that the customer knows sign language or reads lips. 6. If necessary, ask if another method of communicating would be easier. 7. When using a sign language interpreter, look and speak directly to the customer. Serving people who are deafblind. A person who is deafblind has some degree of both hearing and vision loss. They may use an intervener who uses special sign language to communicate, braille, large print, a hearing aid, magnification equipment, a white cane, or a service animal. The following service tips are recommended. 1. Speak directly to the customer, not the interpreter. 2. The customer is likely to explain to you how to communicate with them or give you an assistance card or note. 3. Don't assume what a person can or cannot do. Some people who are deafblind have some sight or hearing, while others have neither. Serving people with speech or language disabilities. Speech or language disabilities can make it difficult for a person to pronounce words or express themselves. Some people may use a communication board or assistive technologies. When serving people with speech or language disabilities, the following service tips are recommended. 1. Don't assume that a person who has difficulty speaking doesn't understand you. 2. Speak directly to the customer and not to their companion or support person. 3. Whenever possible, ask questions that can be answered yes or no. 4. If the person uses a communication device, take a moment to read visible instructions for communicating with them. 5. Confirm what the person has said by summarizing or repeating what you've understood and allow the person to respond. Don't pretend if you're not sure. Serving people with learning and developmental disabilities. Learning and developmental disabilities refers to a wide range of disorders which can mildly or profoundly limit a person's ability to learn, communicate, do everyday physical activities, or live independently. The following service tips are recommended. 1. Be patient. Allow extra time if needed. 2. Don't exaggerate your speech or speak in a patronizing way. 3. Use plain language and provide one piece of information at a time. 4. Ask the customer if they would like help reading your material or completing a form and wait for them to accept the offer of assistance. 5. Try to provide information in a way that works for your customer. 6. Be willing to rephrase or explain something again in another way if needed. Serving people with mental health disabilities. Mental health disabilities can include a variety of disorders that can range in severity. They may affect a person's ability to think clearly, concentrate, or remember things. You may not know someone has this disability unless you are told. Stigma and lack of understanding are major barriers for people with mental health disabilities. The following service tips are recommended. 1. If you sense or know that a customer has a mental health disability, treat them with the same respect and consideration you have for everyone else. 2. Respect your customer's personal space. 3. Be confident, calm, and reassuring. 4. Listen carefully and work with the customer to meet their needs. 5. Respond to the person's immediate behavior and needs. 6. Don't be confrontational. If needed, set limits with the person as you would others. Serving people with service animals. First, it's important to know that there are various types of service animals who support people with various types of disabilities. For example, a person with vision loss may use a guide dog, or a person with hearing loss may use a hearing alert animal. Other service animals are trained to alert a person to an oncoming seizure or to assist people with autism, mental health disabilities, physical disabilities, and other disabilities. There are no restrictions on what type of animal can be used as a service animal. In general, an animal is considered a service animal if you can easily identify it's a service animal through visual indicators, such as when it wears a harness or vest, or the person with a disability provides documentation from a regulated health professional that confirms they need the service animal for reasons relating to their disability. The following service tips are recommended. 1. Don't touch or distract a service animal. It's not a pet, it's a working animal and has to pay attention at all times. 2. If you're not sure if the animal is a pet or a service animal, ask your customer. You may ask to see their documentation from a regulated health professional. The law requires you to allow a person to bring their service animal with them into areas of your premises. In cases where another law prohibits a service animal from entering certain areas, you must provide another way for the person to access your services and explain why to your customer. You can modify your service by leaving the service animal in a safe area where it's allowed and offering assistance to the person while they're separated from the animal, or serving the customer in another area where the animal is allowed. Serving people with an assistive device. An assistive device is a piece of equipment a person with a disability uses to help with daily living. Most assistive devices are personal assistive devices. For example, a wheelchair or walker, white cane, hearing aid, oxygen tank, or communication board. They belong to the person using them and are part of their personal space. The following service tips are recommended. 1. Don't touch or handle any assistive device without permission. 2. Don't move assistive devices or equipment, such as canes or walkers, out of the person's reach. Lastly, here are some service tips for serving people with disabilities over the phone. 1. Speak naturally, clearly, and directly. 2. Focus on what the customer is saying. 3. Don't interrupt or finish your customer's sentences. 4. Give your customer time to explain or respond. 5. If you're not sure what is being said to you, politely ask the customer to repeat what they said, or repeat or rephrase what you heard them say and ask if you have understood correctly. 6. If the customer is using an interpreter or a telephone relay service, speak to the customer. 7. If, after numerous attempts, you and your customer cannot communicate with each other, consider making alternate arrangements that may work best for them. In general, the following service tips are recommended when serving people with disabilities. Pause to read over these. That concludes Module 2. Please proceed to Module 3.